The light cantrip is glorious. It can keep darkness at bay when you and your party delve into the deep places of the world, without resorting to employing a lowly torchbearer like lesser adventurers. Here's a spell description and the classes you can cast it. Now let's dive into 10 ways to use a light spell in your next D&D game. The first and most common use of light is as a hands-free torch. The great advantage of light over a torch is that you can put it on something that you're carrying anyway, like a weapon or shield. This means you don't have to futz around with which hand is holding what when combat breaks out. Plus, a torch can easily go out in wind or rain, and it goes out 100% of the time for underwater missions. Not so with the handy light cantrip, which is totally water and windproof. Another good use of the spell is to light up invisible foes. If you're up against enemies that can turn invisible or are already invisible but in a known location, tagging them with a light spell can be a great way to keep track of where they are. That way, you won't have to guess where they are when you try to attack them. Still, you'll need to get into melee range to attempt this, and the target will have to fail a dex save for it to succeed, but it can be a good use of your turn in some situations, especially if an important enemy might run away while invisible. To be clear, invisible creatures still get the benefits of being invisible, but at least you know where they are. You can also use this trick on roguish enemies who may try to hide in combat, since being lit up makes this tactic impossible. Use number 3 is to light up familiars, pets, etc. Whatever you choose, the idea is to attach it to an object that's attached to a companion. That way, you can enjoy a light source that's distant from your actual party, which is especially useful when used on flying companions. This can help you to scout ahead and keep your party somewhat safer, as hostile creatures will see that the light source is being emitted from someone other than you. Another fun use of light is to drop lit up rocks down deep holes. If you can't see what's at the bottom of a pit, or you're looking for something on a lower level, dropping a lit up pebble can help figure out what you're dealing with. You can also use light to better understand topographical changes in maze-like environments with multiple levels. In a similar vein, you can cast light on arrows before shooting them. This is similar to the rock trick, but for horizontal rather than vertical use. This is great for quickly lighting up the other side of a large room in a dungeon, although it might also attract that dungeon's denizens, which can actually be a good thing if used proactively, as in using light for distractions. This is the classic throw a rock trick like the hobbits with the ring wraith in Fellowship, but with the added bonus of light. Or you could leave a lit up object in a dark place as a kind of bait to see what darkness dwellers come to check it out, possibly allowing for you and your party to ambush them. Another sometimes useful application of light is to use it as a signal. This can mean a few different things, but my favorite version is to give an ally a lighted object, then end the spell whenever you want to signal them to do something. For example, attack when the light goes out, or if the light goes out, we're in danger. In a more literal sense of signaling, you can cast light on an arrow that you shoot directly upwards like a flare. You could also light a new object as a waymarker every 60 feet, so that people behind you who require light can have it and note the spot has already been safely scouted. Or you can use a lit up object as a targeting beacon. For example, if you want to direct allies who wear what to attack, sending a lighted arrow at the objective can make things a whole lot clearer for everyone. This might come up in large dark caverns, defending castle walls, or storming a structure yourself. Another niche trick with light is to be spooky. The whole light still works while you're invisible thing can be used to make yourself or an ally look like some sort of will-o-wisp. This might be useful for spooking plebs or creating a diversion. And my final 2 points are actually tips, not uses, but the first one is to carry ball bearings. You can buy a bag of 1,000 of these for 1 GP. That's basically a limitless supply of small, disposable objects that you can light up at need. This is essential for many of the tricks I've mentioned that involve losing the lighted object, like dropping it down a pit. And my last tip for the light cantrip is to hide the light when enemies are around. Light can be a double-edged sword in D&D. While it's great to see where you're going, being an obvious target isn't always the best thing in dark places. That's why it's good to hide the light by covering it completely or stuffing it into a bag whenever you suspect enemies are around. Those are a few tricks and tips for using the light cantrip and D&D 5e. Up next, let's look at some common questions that come up around the spell's rules. Rule number 1 is that light remains visible on an invisible target. I mentioned this already, but to go into a bit more detail, the game's developers confirm that the invisibility spell doesn't prevent you or your gear from emitting light, yet that light makes you no less invisible. In other words, an invisible creature with light on an object that they carry still benefits from being invisible. Attack rolls against it have disadvantage, and attacks it makes have advantage. But attackers don't have to guess their location when attempting to target them. It's obvious because of the light on them. Some spells still require that you see your target. Technically, light still doesn't help you there because you can't see your target, only the light that they're emitting. But personally, as a DM, I'd allow such spells to target a lit up invisible creature. Rule number 2 is that a lighted object can be any distance from the caster and remain lit up. Because, according to the rules, once a spell is cast, its effects aren't limited by its range unless the spell's description says otherwise. And my last rule reminder isn't actually explicit in the rules and has never been addressed by 5e's devs, but I'm fairly sure that you can't break the lighted object to make two lighted objects. While the spell text doesn't specifically disallow it, I think it is clear about being only able to affect one object at a time. So I'd rule that either the light spell ends if the object is broken, or it only remains on the largest extant piece of the broken object. I hope those ideas get you excited to pick up the light cantrip on your next character. But you're also probably wondering, is light a good enough spell to be worthy of my limited cantrip slots? My answer is yes. Light is a good utility cantrip. Having a hands-free torch at all times is undeniably useful. And I hope that I've shown that it's more useful than a regular torch in many other ways as well. As a disclaimer, I know I mentioned lots of fun tricks with the light spell, but you should know that 90% of the time, it will be used as your party's main light source when dungeon diving. And to be clear, that's far from useless. As a second disclaimer, it's worth noting that light's value kind of depends on your DM. If your DM is a serious stickler about the rules of lighting and who's holding what, its value goes way up, while it's less useful if your DM doesn't care much about tracking light or what you're holding. One last thing, some people say you can skip light if your whole party has dark vision, but I disagree. Even with dark vision, a player in total darkness will have disadvantage on perception checks and won't be able to see colors, so light still has some, albeit less, utility for parties composed of players who all have dark vision. Thanks so much for watching. Hope you found this guide on the light cantrip helpful and can show your appreciation with a like and subscribe. It's a massive help for small YouTubers like me. If you have any stories about using light in your own Dungeons & Dragons game or questions about the spell's rules, please share them in the comments below. This is D&D Lounge, wishing you the best of luck in your next spellcasting venture.